Over the years, there has been plenty of iconic indie games. Whether it's from critically acclaimed games like Celeste or Undertale, or to even cherished indie franchises like Shovel Knight or Five Nights at Freddy's. There has been so many great indie games over the years with some characters that people still talk to this very day. But out of all of them, I still think one of the more recognizable ones, especially around the Nintendo sphere, is easily with Shantae. Because out of all the indie series over the years, Shantae is the one that I keep hearing a lot of. I mean, hell, she's one of the few indie characters that actually made a good cameo in Super Smash Bros. That is not an easy thing to do for an indie series. She even made a crossover cameo in a WarioWare game. It's kind of crazy too, because originally the Shantae series started off as a very niche Game Boy Color title, and now it's considered one of the much more iconic indie franchises of all time. Especially when the series finally got new releases, starting with the DSi. Although between then, there were a few multiple attempts to try and revive the Shantae series, with the most prominent one being a Game Boy Advance sequel. But unfortunately, since they couldn't find a publisher, it eventually got scrapped, but years later, surprisingly in 2023, WayForward would announce that they were bringing back the project as Shantae Advance Risky Revolution. Which honestly got me very interested, because when was the last time you see a Game Boy Advance game released in the year 2023? And it's not just like a simple console port, because they're bringing this whole thing on the Game Boy Advance. Like, the last time I could think of a retro canceled game to get revived like this was probably with Star Fox 2 with the Super Nintendo Classic. So something like this was definitely very interesting. However, there was just one big problem when it comes to the actual weight for this game. As this game was actually a group effort between WayForward and Limited Run. So for those who don't know, Limited Run is a video game distributor who mostly helps out with a lot of like physical releases and such. When it comes to indie games and their studios, they are mostly able to publish the games themselves digitally. But when it comes to physical releases, this is when they contract other companies to help them out with that. As these companies have these stores where you can just buy the games physically and they'll distribute them out to you. With companies like Limited Run and especially Fangamer definitely being the most popular one of them all. But the problem is that Limited Run is definitely one of the much more shadier companies out of them all. Because Limited Run has done so many goddamn stupid things over the years, especially during the 2020s. With one of the biggest ones easily being their big tactics, which is making everything a limited release. You might have remembered the controversies of Super Mario 3D All-Stars when that game was limited. Well, imagine that, but the entire company. As the entirety of Limited Run is literally built on FOMO. And they've been the main physical publishers for Shantae for a few years now. And on surface level, it seems very nifty, and I'll still give them credit when credit's due with the Carbon engine. As because of them, we were able to see a lot of modern ports for a lot of these classic video games. Like, we wouldn't see the Gex Trilogy or Bubsy 3D without them, but at the same time, how they handled the physical stuff, I do not like at all. Because literally, once it's all sold out, it's gone. Like, literally, they're never going to be reselling them again. I had a friend who wanted a physical release of Shantae and the Pirate's Curse on Switch, but the last time that they were able to sell the games physically was 7 years ago on Switch. And you can't just like simply buy this game secondhand on eBay and such without forking a big price. Especially since you could just buy these games digitally. Like, I have a lot of self-pride when it comes to buying games physically. I mean, I bought Mario Kart World on Switch too. But why would I buy Shantae and the Seven Sirens on Nintendo Switch for $70 when I can simply buy it for like $20 on the eShop or even cheaper on a sale? Like, the only Shantae game I was able to get physically on the Switch was Shantae Half Genie Hero, but that's mostly because this is the only Shantae game that wasn't distributed by Limited Run, so the prices there were a lot more cheaper. And then, of course, there's the issues of stuff like multiple delays and how godly long it takes for them to actually ship them out. And unfortunately, Shantae Advance kind of suffered from that, and also how they kind of like handled the release in general. This game was announced for 2023 with a 2024 release date, but it got delayed to 2025, with the game finally being shipped around April with an unknown release date for the game digitally on modern consoles, with some of the customers actually complaining because the quality of some of the cartridges is actually very rough, which is another thing that Limited Run kind of suffered with for a lot of their retro releases. But the funniest thing is that since they're releasing this new game on a Game Boy Advance game before everything else, guess what? The game actually got leaked online. Like, I kind of get the idea what they were trying to do, but at the same time, it's not like this is like a Nintendo Switch 2 game where people have yet to crack it. This is a Game Boy Advance game where a lot of people will pretty much have a lot of knowledge on how to crack it instantly. And the ROM was basically leaked online and everyone can basically try it out for 4 months before it can finally release digitally on modern consoles. I'll be honest, I have no idea what's going on with WayForward or Limited Run, but man, it just feels like a mess on surface level. But jumping to a much more positive note, it is still very cool a game like this even exists. Like, it is very rare for a canceled game like this to get revived, especially a Game Boy Advance game in the year 2025. And as for this video, I'm going to be recording it mostly on the Nintendo Switch version. And despite my rant, I still want to support the series in WayForward, so that's why I bought this game digitally still. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story begins in the ever so peaceful Scuttletown. Shantae is just hanging out with her friends when then suddenly the evil Risky Boots appears for revenge, with the half genie going after the evil pirate, which eventually leads them going deep underground, where Risky Boots reveal her massive plan as she has this new device called the Tremor Engine, which allows her to rotate entire continents to her bidding. With Scuttletown being a primary example because it moved from being inside of a body of water to being located straight into a desert. Shantae's uncle said that he might have a solution, but he's going to need help with the various relic hunters around Sequinland, who were all unfortunately captured by the evil pirate. And so it's now up to Shantae to traverse the entirety of Sequinland to free them to stop Risky Boots once and for all. The story of this game is very straightforward as it's mostly you trying to stop the evil villain. And along the way, Shantae will meet these funny characters that have their unique dialogue. While some of these aren't really as laugh out loud compared to other Shantae games, there is one joke that really made me laugh, which is with Bolo's brother. As there's this one section where Shantae finds him in this cave playing in the water, where she then takes his ball because she was expecting a reward for finding him, with the game itself arguing with Shantae for stealing something from a baby. But yeah, pretty solid selection of characters throughout, although I just have one big problem, which is that how can I enjoy this game? There's no Squid Baron, as he's probably my favorite Shantae character in the series. And also, for some reason, every time the mayor talks in this game, the voice I can only think of is the freaking mayor from Sonic Boom.
Gentlemen, those evildoers are driving the city to bankruptcy. We didn't rig that election just to stand by and do nothing.
Alrighty, so for the gameplay of this 2004 game released in 2025. So for those who don't know, the gameplay of Shantae can be described as a very light Metroidvania, where compared to something like Hollow Knight, for example, where it's this vast world to explore, Shantae is a bit more simpler compared to that. It's honestly kind of comparable to like the Mario RPG games, where those games were mostly gateways to their respected genre. Where these games are made for those who aren't really too familiar with the RPG genre, and that's why I can basically describe the Shantae games as a whole. As the Metroidvania aspect here is a lot more bite-sized, as Shantae has multiple smaller Metroidvania maps to explore. And as for the controls, she still has her iconic tail whip, which is used as the default attack, as well as using her half genie magic to do various things. And of course, it wouldn't be a Shantae game without the various animal transformations. And with these abilities, it allows Shantae to explore different kind of routes. Like with the crab and mermaid abilities allows Shantae to explore the underwaters, while something like the monkey or spider abilities allow Shantae to climb. And along the way, you can find various collectibles, like these rubies, which are the main currency of the game, where you talk to Rhytops, who is the shopkeeper of this game, where you can get various things like different items or upgrades. There's also these heart holders you can find, which allows Shantae to upgrade, although I've got to say I was a bit confused when I first saw them, because I thought they were going to work like the baby squids, where you find 4 of them and you can upgrade 1 heart. But no, you just grab 1 of them and you're immediately upgraded. Although the baby squids are collectibles in this game, but I feel like they're just mostly used for bragging rights. And as for the progression, it is also very straightforward, as this game is divided into 3 separate parts, with each of them playing the exact same, with 2 local towns being in trouble because Risky Boots swapped their placements, and now it's Shantae's job to figure out a way to fix them. There's only 3 actual locations for you to explore in this game, where they all have this big open area for you to explore, as well as having the dungeons, which is where Risky Boots is keeping the relic hunters. And most fascinating is that one of them is Yoshi's long lost father. So with the outdoor areas, even though you do explore, it is also basically one big puzzle to try and find the dungeons, where they have a huge emphasis on the foregrounds and backgrounds. And you can even find Risky's devices that allows you to shift them as well as accessing various caves, where you can find treasure or these various genie fountains, which is how Shantae is able to learn various different kind of animal abilities. It's all pretty solid stuff throughout. And also the very dungeons you explore in this game are very good because they have a good amount of different puzzles to explore. I especially love this one where you're constantly climbing up and down to fill in a picture, And they all have a perfect length where it feels like none of them actually dragged. Although I do kind of wish they included a map feature for some of these. And all of this concludes when you find the wing nut of each of the dungeons, which is basically you accessing the boss. Now, the bosses themselves are fairly easy, but I do like how before them you have these quirky little cutscenes. Ending things off with you saving one of the relic hunters and trying to fix both towns. With the whole thing concludes of you actually stopping Risky Boots. A very nice and simple gameplay loop. And yeah, that's all I can really say about this game. It's just another pretty good Shantae game. And I know that kind of sounds like a bad thing, but keep in mind, even though that this is the 6th ever Shantae game, this is still a game that was originally made in 2004. So this was made all before the Shantae series was fully refined. So it wasn't really building off with these games, it was only building off with this one. So if you ever decide to do like a Shantae binge, I would say play the Game Boy Color version first, and then play Risky Revolution before the rest of them. Because as a direct sequel to the original Game Boy Color game, I'd say this game really knocks it out of the park. With the controls and everything feeling a lot more refined, and the biggest benefit of this game is easy with its pacing. Because since this game is very short and you're constantly going through different locations, it never really felt like this game dragged at all. And graphically and aesthetically, this game looks really good for the console. Even though that this game was reworked during the 2020s, this game genuinely does feel like it was made 20 years ago, and I mean that in the best possible way. The environments and the characters in this game are very well animated. Like, everything in this game just feels very colorful. I especially love the sound design in this game, how everything feels very compressed and crunchy. It weirdly made me feel very nostalgic, even though this is a game I literally played for the first time. And the music in this game is very top notch. It really does have like that upbeat Shantae vibe, if you know what I mean. And yeah, that's about it when it comes to Risky Revolution. I know this video is not as long as the other games I talk about on this channel. And yeah, that's my only big gripe with this game, is that this game is very, very small. But that doesn't automatically equate to the game's quality. I mean, Shadow Generations is one of my favorite games this decade. And that game was 2 or 3 hours as well. Now, I wouldn't say that this game is worth $25 per se, but honestly on a sale, I would say try it out. This game is very short, don't get me wrong, but honestly you could tell that a lot of people really cared about making this game. Like again, it is super rare for a cancel game like this to actually see the light of day. And honestly, for that alone, I honestly say try it out, because this is a very cool piece of history. Like, it's a Nintendo Game Boy Advance game in the year 2025. And for that alone, I just have to give out a huge congratulations for Way Forward for this game. It might have taken 20 years, but it's very cool to see this game see the light of day. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye!